Welcome back, True Seeker. It is Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, and a big story this morning. AT&T customers without cellular service nationwide. They're saying some other carriers are getting impacted, including Verizon and T-Mobile. Of course, those are the three biggest carriers in the nation. What I can also say is out here, I'm in Washington State. Spectrum cable service went down just after midnight. According to the email they sent out, it went down at 12:41 a.m. on the West Coast, and it was restored about 50 minutes ago. So there might be other services that are down. But notice this is happening on February 22nd, 2/22. I want to start there, and then I want to talk about what else really matters with the AT&T service provider being the top story in light of today, because it goes back through history. It connects to what happened in 1995 at Oklahoma City, and it goes back to 1968 when AT&T made 911 the national emergency dialing code. Actually, you know what? It just in real time. Let's just start with this piece actually, and then we'll move to today, February 22nd. If you guys followed me when I went down to Oklahoma City for the anniversary of the April 19th bombing, there were a few things at the site of the bombing where the memorial is that just blew me away. And I was so glad I traveled there to see it with my own eyes. Right above the former site of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building that exploded on April 19th, 95 is the AT&T Tower for Oklahoma City. It's right across the street. And when I first saw it with my eyes, I thought, how interesting. Because again, Oklahoma City was the act of terrorism that was like nothing anyone had ever seen in the States until 9/11. And remember, they put Timothy McVeigh to death exactly 3 months before 9/11. So that story came back. And then there was an even worse act of terrorism. But what blew me away is that the AT&T building in Oklahoma City, the telephone building was established in 1927, which means it was established 68 years before 95. And I didn't realize that, but for years, going back to, I think I started reporting on this in 20, I lost track of time. But anyway, for the longest time, I've been pointing out how in 1968, again, we're talking about 68 years in Oklahoma City. In 1968, World Trade Center construction began in New York, and 911 was made the national emergency dialing code by AT&T. And the first 911 call in history was in February of 1968. The date was February 16th, 1968. The code was made by AT&T. And if you're new here, 1968 was the year of years. A lot of things happened. George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. Of course, he was the president when 9/11 happened. 2001: A Space Odyssey came out. Boeing debuted their jumbo jetliners. Like it was all Boeing planes the day of 9/11. Again, major military contractor is Boeing from Seattle, like Magnus and Clementic Associates, who helped build the World Trade Centers. And of course, in Gematria, Seattle, Washington equals 68, like the word terror. If you're new here, Gematria is the practice of coding numbers into words. The practice of taking numbers out of dates is numerology. So with regards to all this 68 stuff, today's date numerology, February 22nd, 2024, it's a date with 68 numerology. And you get that by adding 2 plus 22 plus 20 plus 24, 68. With regards to Oklahoma City, Joe Biden passed the nation's first counterterrorism legislation 68 days before Oklahoma City blew up. And that legislation passed on Governor Keating's birthday, who was the governor of Oklahoma at the time. That was the 41st day of the year, February 10th. Again, you can look all this up. February 10th, 95, the nation's first counterterrorism bill passes. It was spearheaded by Joe Biden, who's now the sitting president. 68 days later, the building explodes. And again, if you're new here, Gematria, there are 4 base ciphers: the alphabetic order forwards, the alphabetic order in reverse, and both orders with numerology. You can see the word terror equals 94, 40, 68, 41. Three of those numbers have everything to do with the World Trade Centers in September 11th. The World Trade Centers opened on the 94th day of the year, April 4th, 1973, 5 years to the day of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. Again, construction began in 68. 68 was also the year the New York Jets had their only Super Bowl winning season, just like after 9/11, you had the Patriot Act, and all of a sudden the Patriots were the greatest football team on earth, just like how the NFL was established on the birthday of the Constitution, because it really is part of the whole scheme of the cabal. They need the entertainment to keep people pacified. And then with regards to the 41, that was the date numerology of September 11, 2001. 9 plus 11 plus 20 plus 01, 41. And of course, it was also coded into the supposed people who did the attack, Al Qaeda. And if you don't know this, June 1st, 2001, the U.S. federal government simulated Al Qaeda attacking the U.S. in an unprecedented terrorist attack. And there's a lot more that can be said about that. But 68, again, the word terror has a gematria value of 68. So does the acronym CIA, 68. And, you know, around the time George W. Bush graduated from Yale Skull and Bones, he had family members well established in the government. His father, who was also president before him, was also the head of the CIA. And I've been saying for some time, what is this AT&T company really? You guys might recall after 9/11 and the Patriot Act and the years after that, the mainstream media broke the story that AT&T had been keeping all of its customers' phone records since 1984, the infamous year. Again, the same AT&T that has this problem today, since 1984. And then you might recall that that story brought about the conversation by our government about, do these telecommunications companies, do they deserve immunity from prosecution for violating the rights of citizens? Because it became obvious that these companies had gone above and beyond the scope of the Patriot Act, and some of them had already been doing this well before 9/11 happened, including AT&T. And really, you got to think, how does a company like this have any customers? Well, it's because we don't have any options, right? I don't have AT&T, but I have a company that's not really any better, Verizon. So I'm just saying, we don't have any options. These are the company. It's like, okay, you got to choose this one or this one or this one. And the reason I ended up with Verizon is because everywhere I was living, everyone else's signal was terrible, but Verizon worked. Anyway, again, I've been talking about AT&T 1968, Oklahoma City in 68 forever. Now we have this happen on 68 date numerology, very close to the anniversary of 911 being made the national emergency dialing code. And keep in mind, the 56th anniversary just passed, right? If you're new here, that's another very special number, 56. I'm going to save that for right now, and I'm going to go to the date 222. Again, I have a book out there. Well, I have a couple books out there. And the last one I wrote was Number Games, 9/11 to Coronavirus. And one of the huge themes in this book is 56, but also at the beginning, 222. I establish how important 222 is to 9/11 and coronavirus, and what the 222 number means. It's bigger than 9/11 and coronavirus. But again, today's February 22nd. And you might recall that 2 years ago today, if you go back and look, 2 years ago today, can you remember what Joe Biden did 2 years ago today at 2:22 p.m. Eastern time on the date 2/22/2022? Can you remember what he did? Go back and look, because he did it right at 2:22 Eastern time on this day 2 years ago. He addressed the nation about what was going on with Russia and Ukraine, and he had to do it right at 2:22 Eastern time. Order out of chaos. The Masonic Jesuit motto has a value of 222. It's just when you run the alphabetic order in reverse. Z is 1 back to A is 26. And notice, New York, New York, again, where 9/11 happened. 222. And again, from 9/11 to the pandemic being declared, you know, the 99.9% survivable illness that they had to use to reshape the world, it was exactly, here, I'll just show you, 9/11/2001 to March 11, 2020, the day the pandemic was declared. Guess how many weeks later it was? Or excuse me, not weeks, months. exactly 222 months later. 222. And remember what they called it at first. At first, it was called Wuhan coronavirus 222. And again, who simulated the coronavirus pandemic before it happened? The World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum 222. And the sitting president at the time was Donald Trump, Jesuit educated at Fordham in New York. And where was Donald Trump on January 21st, the day the first case of coronavirus was confirmed outside of mainland China, confirmed in Bill Gates' backyard? Look, Donald Trump's birthday is June 14th. His last birthday before that was the year 2019. January 21st, 2020, Donald Trump is at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland gloating about his trade deal with China. And that was Donald Trump's 222nd day of his age, gloating about how his trade deal with China would change the world forever. Just happened to be there on the 222nd day of his age as all these things were going down. And again, these aren't accidents. These are rituals. It's not an accident that Joe Biden had to address the nation at 2:22 on 2/22. And just like it's not an accident, this is happening when these same federal types have been telling us for a long time. Janet Napolitano in 2013, as she was exiting Department of Homeland Security, which came out of 9/11. That government department didn't exist for 9/11. But her speech on the way out was, the next major 9/11 is not if, but when, and it'll be a cyber attack taking down the grid. You know, no power, no communication. And we see these little teases as time goes on. This is a tease today. And hopefully there's not a lot bigger event, say, coming just days from now. You know, the 56th day of the year is just 3 days away. And again, it's been 56 years since 1968 when AT&T made 911 the code. We know these people work by a code. With regards to 56, if you're new here, history, 56 signers on the Declaration of Independence. The nation's capital, Washington, D.C. is 56. But what was Washington, D.C. before it was the federal city? It was the stronghold for the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit cabal, the same Jesuit cabal that gave us the calendar, the language that really is controlling this nation ritualistically. What happened after 9/11? We went on crusades, as the sitting president at the time called it, Bush. Who did the crusades? The Catholic Church, a war against Muslims. That's what happened after 9/11. What were the planes that hit targets on 9/11? Flight 11. Remember, Flight 11, the first one in New York, the 11th state, on the 11th day of the month, into the buildings that look like a massive 11. The other plane that hit a target in New York was 175. And then the one that hit the Pentagon, the 77-foot tall Pentagon on the 77th meridian, 77 minutes after taking off, was Flight 77. And if you add 11 plus 175 plus 77, it equals 263, which is the 56th prime number. Not an accident. Just like how everything about the pandemic that was synced with 9/11, 222 months later, was 56. You know, Gavin Newsom, who's 56 years old right now, locked down California, said 56% are going to get the virus in 8 weeks, which is 56 days. But, and by the way, you see how Gavin Newsom's 56, 155, 142. He made sense to be the first governor to lock down the nation for the cooties, because look at the gematria value, 56, 142, 155, just like Gavin Newsom, Jesuit educated. The Jesuits serve the Catholic Church, the CIA. Some people call it the Catholics in Action. Again, coming back to CIA in 68. By the way, 1968 is when coronavirus was coined. And it's also the year fentanyl was approved by the FDA. It's the year MLK was assassinated, and RFK. Big year, 68. But yeah, I've always made this point about AT&T, 68, 1968. And that since we went to Oklahoma City and I realized the AT&T building stands right over it. And then you go just right up to the building. There's a plaque on there, built in 1927. I was just blown away. And then if you go to the Oklahoma City site, what'll also blow you away is right behind the memorial is the Masonic Temple. And they have a statue. Look at this. And Jesus wept. See how that's 68? There's a statue right across the street in tribute to the victims of the Oklahoma City blast. And the name of the statue, it's etched on there, and Jesus wept. They had to put a 68 on it, and it's at the Catholic Church. Catholicism, 68. Get going with the CIA, 68. Catholics in Action. And for anyone who gets offended by that, I'm not blaming all Catholics. I'm just pointing out the facts. We're on the Catholic Church's calendar. We're speaking their language. They run this nation. Their architecture's all over the Capitol. These rituals go back to their history. And just the same stuff over and over. They have to tell you more than 74,000 AT&T customers report outages. I guess it was a lot more than 74,000 nationwide. But they just got to put the same numbers in the stories over and over. Just like how the World Trade Centers were on the 74th meridian west. And here, for one more point about today's date numerology, just like how there's different paths in gematria, alphabetic order forwards and backwards with numerology, there's different paths in date numerology as well. We talked about how today's 68 date numerology, which is true. 68 does compress to 5. 68 becomes 6 plus 8 is 14. 14 becomes 1 plus 4 is 5. So today's date numerology is also 5. And it's the 22nd of the month. And Derek, if you're out there, I don't know why you took it out of your calculations. Before he redid the calculator a year and a half back, like you'd see the ampersand in the decode. It's confusing people who don't understand. Like if I was showing this to my mom, she'd be like, well, where did the ampersand go? Does that change the value? I don't see that there. Derek used to have it in where it's a null value, which it is. So I don't know why he took that out of the calculation. He made all these changes about a year and a half back, and I don't really think any of them were good. He renamed all the ciphers. Like, why are we doing that? Why are we renaming ciphers? But yeah, it's too bad that most people think this information's bogus and bizarre and meaningless when the same stuff just keeps happening over and over and over and over. And it's so obvious they work by a very redundant code, and they've been working by this code for literally decades. So it's not an accident what happened today. And again, it looks like it goes beyond AT&T, but there's a reason AT&T is getting the brunt of it. I'm sure AT&T leads the way. And again, I'm pretty sure that AT&T at the end of the day, just like this is what people need to understand about the world of telecommunications and big tech. These are not private companies. These are heavily subsidized companies by the government, first of all, but I also think at the end of the day, they essentially are government companies. And always when America's talking about, oh, those communists over there, China, Russia, I don't think it's really any different in America. It's like the government's running these corporations. They might as well be government. And the only reason they don't report that they're government is because they want you to think that we're different than these other communist nations that control and dictate everything about their people's lives. You look at, again, all the money that goes into these companies, how all of the policies just bend around all of the government ideas. I mean, look at what happened at the time of COVID. You had the government working with Apple and Google and all this to keep track of people through their cell phones. And let's not forget that point either. 9/11 happened at the same time. Smartphones weren't quite out yet. Smartphones were about 5-6 years later. But everyone was starting to have cell phones in their pocket at the time 9/11 happened. I actually didn't even have a cell phone yet when 9/11 happened. I was a late bloomer. Almost all of my friends had gotten a cell phone in high school. I was a freshman in college when 9/11 happened. I didn't want a cell phone because I saw the disadvantage of it. I didn't want people to be able to get a hold of me all the time. My mom and stuff. I was like, I don't want a cell phone. I ended up getting a cell phone. I think I ended up getting it maybe for my second semester of college. So maybe at the start of 2002. But anyway, everybody was starting to get cell phones at this time, or they already had just gotten it. And the next thing you know, the Patriot Act rolled out. And the next thing, there were all these new laws that the government had the right to keep all of your data and information, phone, email, library, etc. And, for over a decade now, they've been telling us in the news that, you might want to think about putting a piece of tape over the camera on your TV or your computer because Big Brother could be watching you. If they deem you a threat, they could be watching you through your devices. They can be listening to you through your devices. And again, people need to wake up to what this is. There's like no separation here. These companies, government are all one and the same, and they're literally playing games with us to create the agenda they want. So because again, how were they going to pass the Patriot Act without 9/11? They weren't. How are they going to send off all the children to a needless war to rake in all this money for the fat cats at the top who profit from it without 9/11? They weren't. So people need to wake up to what their government is, you know? And as much as we pay in taxes and knowing that these really are government companies, I feel like our cell phone service should be free each month, you know? Again, all those communist or socialist nations over in Europe, again, their cell phones are way cheaper. Their cable bill's way cheaper, and they pay just hardly more in taxes than we do. They don't have to pay for secondary education. They get college, it's covered. Their cable bills are way less. Their food quality's higher. Again, all these things in America that they teach us that we're not supposedly, and that's worse over there. It's like, I start to look at America, it's like our quality of life is worse than almost everybody's. I don't see how we're really any different than these communist nations when you actually take the blindfold off and look at what's going on. It's just, people need to recognize that we've been lied to about everything. And this right here, this supposed outage, like it's some kind of accident, that's a lie. This is not a lie, or this is not an accident. This is intentional. That's why it follows the same number pattern that we talk about over and over, that I've essentially written 2 books about now, but especially the last one, which was laser focused on the recurring numbers, why everything goes back to 1968, what 222 is all about. And again, now this. And here's how I'll finish this video. Just like I've been saying forever, they keep hinting that the next 9/11's not if but when, and it's the grid going down for a significant period of time and a cyber attack from one of our enemies, Russia, Korea. Understand this, you guys. Korea is controlled by the CIA. We took over that nation when we started the war there on George Orwell's birthday. And, you got the 2 Koreas, and one of them's used as this big boogeyman. And I guarantee you, at the end of the day, that nation is controlled with our black budget tax dollars in the same way Israel is. The United States empire is all over the world, and we need the boogeyman. Iran, another, like literally, it's in the history books that the CIA overthrew Iran. You don't think we run Iran too? I mean, you're out of your mind. We overthrew it in the 50s. You think we gave it back? We need these boogeymen for all of the agendas so that we can keep putting more and more money towards war and machines of war. People need to wake up to where we live and what time it is and what might be coming. So again, make sure you are prepared in case they do take the grid down for a period of time. Remember the Public Enemy album that just came out the other year? What you're going to do when the grid goes down, and how we use that album cover, which is Arizona, to predict power outages on Valentine's Day the other year when it went down from Houston to Atlanta to Portland. And again, Portland and Houston were without power for over a week. People in Houston were freezing to death because it was so unprecedented cold. But that What You're Going to Do When the Grid Goes Down came out 56 days after Chuck D's birthday, and power outages 56, national outages 56. Again, 3 days from now is the 56th day of the year. Power outage 56, national outage 56. The winner of the 56th presidential election, Barack Obama, just put out his nice movie not too long ago about the grid going down from a cyber attack. It's 3 days from now. We know about the powerful relationship with 3 and 56. The word 3 equals 56. The word light equals 56. In the 3rd verse of Genesis, God makes light. Abrahamics 56. The Abrahamic religions, there's 3. They're based in the Torah, which begins with Genesis, and Genesis 1:3. In case you forgot that part of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then skip down to 1:3. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. So again, big relationship with 3 and 56. And again, I hope nothing happens on the 56th day of the year. But I do wonder, with what's going down today and just familiar number patterns, if this could be a sign of what's to come in a few days. So again, make sure you don't live in fear, but you recognize where you live. In a nation ruled over by psychopaths who've been lying to you and doing these types of things to you for all of your life, which you've survived through most of them. But if they do take down the grid and you find that you don't have any non-perishable food in your house, and you don't have any jugs of water in your house, and you don't have any first aid in your house, and you don't have any candles or batteries or flashlights, it might be a real miserable week for you without power, and maybe panic in your community, and the grocery stores raided and all out of stuff within days, and you don't have nothing. You'd probably survive, but it would be a real miserable week. And again, meanwhile, if you have those things in your house, you're not happy about what's going on in the world, but you're also in a lot better place. And it is cold this time of year, so again, just making sure you got things to stay warm. I mean, it's freezing ass cold. If you got some big blankets, the right clothes, you'll probably also be all right. So, and again, let's hope that doesn't happen. But things like today could be little signs of what's not too far off. So, yeah, I mean, even this sentence here about more than 74,000 AT&T, it's nothing but numerical reporting. The World Trade Centers were on the 74th meridian. The 74 is everything to these people. It's not an accident, for example, that our nation's birthday is 7/4, holiday is 74, Independence Day is 74, English is 74. We supposedly got free from London. We didn't. London 74, Gematria 74. Marley 74 started his solo career in 74 in London and then was killed by the code, killing 74 like three of the first five presidents dead on 7/4. Like what happened on the World Trade Centers on the 74th meridian. Occult means hidden 74 and on and on and on. 74 number is massive. They got people believing in stories like this. Jesus 74, not his name, but changed for English. Cross 74, Messiah 74, Gospel 74, Parables 74, which are riddles. These people use the Bible like a playbook. They're laying down riddles every day in Numbers. The Bible, what's right at the beginning? What's the fourth book of the Bible titled? Oh yeah, it's titled Numbers. Every verse is numbered. Like, what do you mean numbers, man? Numbers are just for counting. Well, wake up. We're showing you that they're more. Well, yeah. They are used for counting. These people are counting down their rituals every day. But yeah, AT&T 68222. We've been talking about this one for a long time. So here's more proof. What's been going down in this nation's been no accident. Delta Dawn says, Zach, over here in Tri-Cities, we've had lots of power outages for 2 weeks. I'm not far from you. Where I live, which is about 30 miles from you, I don't know what it is, but they always have really quick. The power goes down and comes back on, but it's only down for short periods of time out here. And this part of the country where we are, the power comes from Hanford, the nuclear site. That they're the first nuclear site in the nation. Well, some of it comes from Rivers, but a lot does come from Hanford out here. The random guy in the chat. Speak on Project Bluebeam. Well, we have in the past. Read my own posts on it. There's a reason it's from 94. 94. Alien equals 94. For those of you guys who don't know this, look at this. Project Bluebeam is 94, right? Aliens 94. Seattle, Washington is 94, right? And the Space Needle's up here. And you got Jeff Bezos, who looks like he's from another world. Did I spell his name wrong? Jeff Bezos, there it is, 94, when you spell it right. And he's founded Amazon in 94, Amazon, forest, trees, books, started out as a book company, boxes, a lot of boxes with Amazon. Anyway, did you know that for people who don't know this, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates both started their companies in New Mexico, associated with Roswell in 1947, and then moved their companies up to Seattle, where the first official UFO sighting was in 47, just before Roswell, at Rainier. But yeah, Seattle, Washington has that 9468, just like Terre and Seattle. Big part of what happened on 9/11 as well, because again, Magnus and Klemenkic Associates and Boeing are from Seattle, and the man who designed the World Trade Centers is from Seattle, and he was a Japanese American, reminding us that they called 9/11 the new Pearl Harbor, and Pearl Harbor had Japanese kamikaze pilots that flew planes into targets. And of course, Pearl Harbor happened on December 7th, 127, and on 9/11, buildings 1, 2, and 7 fell, and now they call it Ground Zero. But Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, in case something bigger is coming, you better make sure you got those non-perishable food items, some water, some essentials. Protection device probably isn't a bad idea either. You live in a city, you just never know. Desperate people who aren't prepared, they might come looking for something. And that's why I suggest, like, if you live in a big city, I suggest you make it in your plans to get out of big cities. I don't think that's the place to be in the future. You know, I think a small town. Problem is with small towns can be hard to find employment, but I just think with the places they're taking us to, the cities are not the place to be. So, all right, we'll leave it there for now, and until next time, true seeker.